Good morning. Greetings from BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore. This is the first module in the topic on discrete Fourier transform. Discrete Fourier transform, or also represented as DFT. This is one very important concept that is required for understanding discrete time signal processing, or the way the discrete time signals work. Now, to move into this discrete Fourier transform, we shall first take up the convolution example, or the property that we had seen in the previous module, wherein we let us consider the convolution sum of an LTI system which has an input x of n, impulse response Hn, and output Yn. We know that the output Yn is given by the convolution sum for a linear time invariant system, which is given by minus infinity to infinity, say h of m, x of n minus n. Either way, I can write x convolved with h or h convolved with x. And if we now take a special input, wherein my input x of n is going to be e to the power of j omega n, a complex exponential signal. So in this case, my output now reduces to sigma m equal to minus infinity to infinity h of m e to the power of j omega n minus n. Which then becomes, because my summation with respect to m, I can get the n term out of the summation, and then I have m equal to minus infinity to infinity h of m e to the power of minus j omega n. Or m is just a variable that is a running variable, which eventually vanishes once I perform the summation, and hence I can replace m by n, in which case I have yn is equal to e to the power of j omega n sigma, say n equal to minus infinity to infinity h of n e to the power of minus j omega n. Now we recognize the output in this case as the product of two terms, where my one term is the input x of n, and the other term is a function of h of n. It is, so here this is completely dependent on the input, and the second term is completely dependent on the system property, the system's impulse response. So they are not, the second term is not dependent on the input, and similarly the first term is not dependent on the system properties. So this is a very unique example of an input function where the output on performing convolution results as the product of two terms, and the two terms are independent. Like this is an input and this is dependent, the second term is dependent on the system properties or the impulse response of the system. So this second term is when I do the summation, when we do the summation n equal to minus infinity to infinity h of n e to the power of minus j omega n, this summation is going to give me a function of h of omega. This is going to give us a function of h of omega, and this is known as the discrete time Fourier transform of the signal. This sigma, this is known as the as the discrete time Fourier transform of the signal, and it is given by this this simple summation, uh, summation of Hn from minus infinity to infinity e power minus j omega n. Now we will look into this h omega later on, but then what we recognize is Hn is always real, because Hn has to be real in all cases. Though we often say that if Hn is real, this is valid. If Hn is real, the response is going to be. But Hn is always real for any physical system. I cannot multiply the complex constant, and hence for any physical system, the coefficients are real, and hence for any physical system, the impulse response has real constants. And once Hn is real, and then since I am doing the summation, depending on the active values of h of n, I am going to get a different h of omega. This h of omega, we can recognize it as a complex function of omega. Complex function of omega. And because it is complex, to plot any complex function, I cannot plot it in a single plot. So I can plot it as the magnitude and the angle of h of omega. And when I have this magnitude h of omega, when I plot this mod of h of omega versus omega, I get the magnitude response of the system. The magnitude response of the system. While when I plot angle h of omega versus omega, I get what is known as the phase response of the system. Okay, so we get so when I come given an impulse response, I can compute the discrete time Fourier transform h omega, which is usually complex. And when h of omega is complex, since I cannot represent it by a single plot, I represent it in the magnitude and phase form. And when I plot magnitude versus omega, I get the magnitude spectrum or the magnitude response of the system. Similarly, when I plot the angle versus omega, I get the phase response of the system. Now, going back to our problem, our aim was not to compute the magnitude or the phase response, but our aim was in computing the output of the system to an input e power j omega n. So what does this translate to? So if I give my input as, say, instead of having a generalized omega, let us say my input x of n is some value, say e power j omega naught n. So I am giving an input, a complex exponential input at certain frequency, e power j omega naught n. Then what is going to be my output? I need to evaluate h of omega at omega equal to omega naught, and then I am going to get the magnitude and the phase at omega naught. And so then my output of the system is now going to be e to the power of j omega naught n multiplied. So there's going to be a change in magnitude and there is going to be a phase delay. So since once again I cannot give a complex exponential here, considering a input to a system being e power j omega naught n, in real implementation or application, I cannot give a complex exponential, and I can only give real signals. And so as an extension of this above observation, let us say my input to the system with an impulse response Hn, input to say cos omega naught n, and what is my output Yn. So as an extension of, because e power j omega naught n is all pure towards understanding the system performance, but of physical significance is something that we can really apply to a system, and that those signals have to be real. And one example, as an extension of e power j omega naught n, and then e power minus j omega naught n, and then I get cos omega naught n. So my output Yn in this case is going to be cos omega naught n, and again multiplied by compute h of omega at omega equal to omega naught, and angle of h of omega at omega equal to omega naught. and this is going to result in some change in magnitude cos of omega naught n minus sin theta omega naught. So the value, if I call the angle at omega equal to omega naught as say theta omega naught, so I'm going to have the cosine function with the change in amplitude and change in with the phase delay. So this immediately translates to suppose my input is say n, and let us say I have a cosine function. My input is this x of n, and depending on the system, depending on the system impulse response Hn, the output is going to change. But what is likely to happen is there will be some phase delay, and there will not be any change in the frequency. So if I give an input xn as say a times cos omega naught n, my output yn is going to be some a multiplied by say some other constant b cos omega naught n minus theta. And this constant b will depend on the frequency omega naught and also on the phase. Or if I say plot, for example, say I plot h of omega of the system, say for the interval minus pi to plus pi. For example, I mean, let us take this is an example of say h of omega, and say angle of h of omega. If I plot for some certain system, let us say it is like this, say minus pi to plus pi, and if this is my omega naught, and say this is my omega naught, so I need to look at omega naught, the value of the magnitude at that omega naught, and I also need to look at the phase delay at omega naught, and this is what is going to be my constant b, and this will give me my phase delay theta. So I am going to have an output that is going to get multiplied by b. So depending on, so if I change my omega naught, if I move to some other frequency, then I have the corresponding magnitude and I have the corresponding phase delay. So as an extension of this observation, this property of convolution, what we have is any sinusoidal signal applied to an LTI system gives a sinusoidal signal as output with change in amplitude and some phase delay. The amplitude, change in amplitude depends on mod of h of omega, the magnitude response at that frequency omega naught, while the delay, the phase delay depends on the angle of h of omega at omega equal to omega naught. So when I look at the magnitude and phase spectrum, and if I have any sinusoidal input signal as an input, I can immediately tell what is the output of the system by simply looking at the magnitude and the phase response. So this is unique to an LTI system, and this is unique to sinusoidal signals as input. Now we will take a small deviation here. Let's take a small deviation. let us recall the linearity property of of systems. Linearity property of systems. So what does the linearity property say? Suppose I have an input x of n, and let us say I have a system, and the system has an output, gives an output, say yn. We have a system, and the input is xn and output is yn. Now, if I give some input, say x1n, this should result in an output x1n. Let us say it results in an output y1n. Similarly, if I give another input, say x2n, another input, I am going to get the corresponding output, say y2n. And if I give a times x1n, if I multiply, if I have an amplitude scaling in my input, then I am going to get the same amplitude scaling in my output. So a times x1n results in a times y1n because of the system being linear. And it also has to, similarly extending b times x2n should result in b times y2n. And combining the above requirements, we have that a times, if I have the sum of two signals, a times x1n plus b times x2n. If I apply this as the input, my output of the system is going to be a times y1n plus b times y2n. When any system satisfies these conditions, that is amplitude scaling in input results in amplitude scaling in an output, or if I add two signals, then the output is equal to the sum of the corresponding outputs. This is known as, while this is known as linearity, this condition is known as the superposition theorem. So only when all the above is satisfied, we classify the system as linear. We classify the system as linear. Now let's take a case. Let's take a case where we are given a system in a black box. We do not know the system, and we are having only the input and the output. We have the provision to give some input, and we have the option to read the corresponding output, and the whole system is, say, covered. It's a black box. Say it's a black box. So we do not know what is inside the system. Now, if I want to test the system for linearity, let us say I have a system and I want to test the system for linearity. I need to check. So if I go by the formal definition of linearity, I will have to give one input sequence x1n and observe my corresponding output y1n. It is not difficult because I can give any input and record the output of the system. Similarly, I can give a times x1n, and now I can multiply by same input by c and see whether I'm getting a corresponding multiplied amplitude scaled output. Now I can give another input x1, x2n and compute y2n. And I can perform amplitude scaling of x2n and then get b times y2n. All this is possible. I have one system. I can give x1n, observe the output. I can amplitude scale input and then see the output. Then I need to give the sum a times x1n plus b times x2n. Okay, this is also possible because I can do. And then I need to compute the corresponding output and check if my output is a times y1n plus b times y2n. This is what I need to do. And then how can I do this? I should have somewhere stored my values a times y1n and stored the values b times y2n and add them up and check it. Otherwise, I should have an identical model, a replica of the same model, I can simultaneously have two systems and then see whether I can perform the addition. So these are the steps to be followed in testing the system for linearity, and we will agree that though linearity is something that we want in systems, the testing by the formal definition, by the above definition of the linear systems is not so easy. What comes up handy now is it's extremely simple to simply give to the same system. We give to the same system, our black box that we are having. We give a cosine function, some frequency cos omega naught n, and we record the output yn. And if my output is say a times cos omega naught n minus say theta naught, then I conclude my system is linear. So this becomes it's an extension, because we have seen the convolution sum, we have seen what happens when I give an x by e power j omega n. As an extension of that observation, we can, a simpler method to test the system for linearity is to give a cosine signal, and I should have this cosine signal at the output of the same frequency. There can be change in amplitude, there can be a change in amplitude of the output, there can be a phase delay, but definitely no change in frequency, and if this condition is satisfied, then I can immediately conclude that my system is linear. I cannot have the amplitude clipping of my sine wave, or I cannot have a change in frequency. I can have some delay, I can have a change in, it can be increase or decrease in amplitude, that is fine, but there can be a phase change, but definitely no change in frequency. Once I am able to observe this, immediately I conclude that the system is linear. So this was a small deviation from what we have been discussing, because testing, because given often we will not have the examples that we are discussing in the class. We may have some closed box, or we may have some system that needs to be modeled. We do not know what is within, and this becomes an extremely simple test for checking the system for linearity. So now let's go back. Let's continue with what we were discussing. We have come out with the definition of the discrete time Fourier transform, and that is given by h of omega, where h of omega is given by sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity h of n e power minus j omega n. Now let us take one or two simple examples to observe the. Now we have moved, and to represent it, I can tell h of n has a discrete time Fourier transform h of omega. Once again, there are unique relation between the time domain and the frequency domain. So we were doing convolution sum, and then we were checking a property on convolution sum, and we have moved from the time domain to the frequency domain, and through this expression, or through this relation. And this also took us to a simple method of testing the system for linearity by giving sinusoidal signals as an input to the system. So now we'll take one or two examples on how to compute the DTFT of a given sequence, and then we are the topic for today's lecture is discrete Fourier transform. So let's take the discrete Fourier. We have to move to the discrete Fourier transform. So before that, we'll just take maybe one example of computing h of omega. And let's take a simple example. I mean, actual elaborate discussions, examples, properties, and application of properties of DTFT, we'll keep it for another session where we'll discuss Fourier series, Fourier transform of continuous and discrete time signals. Now today this lecture is focused on moving from convolution sum to the discrete Fourier transform. So let's take that path, and we will not be discussing in detail h of omega, its properties and application. So let's take an example. Let us say my impulse response h of n. H of n is say 1 to 1. So this is my say time domain signal 1 to 1, and I can write this as this is delta n plus 1 plus 2 delta n plus delta n minus 1. And if I want to sketch the signal in time domain, this is what it is going to be. N at minus 1 it's a 1, at 0 it's a 2, and at 1 it's a 1. Now let us see, this is my signal in time domain and I want to compute its discrete time Fourier transform h of omega. So let's compute h of omega for the same signal. So I have my, by definition it is n equal to minus infinity to infinity h of n e to the power of minus j omega n. But in this example it is, we have it non-zero only for 3 values at n equal to minus 1. So h of minus 1 e to the power of j omega n, j omega 1. So or minus 1 plus h of 0 e to the power of j 0, j omega 0, and h of 1 e to the power of minus j omega 1, which now becomes, my h of minus 1 is a 1, e to the power of j omega, h of 0 by definition, not by definition, as the example that we are considering, h of 0 is a 2. So I take it as 2. 2 e to the power of j0, which is a 1, plus h of 1 is again given as 1 and e power minus j omega, which now becomes 2 plus e to the power of j omega plus e to the power of minus j omega, and say I multiply and divide by 2, so that I can represent the term within the bracket as say cos omega. So I have my result as 2 plus cos omega. So this I've taken a very simple example and I'm able to compute it without taking any help of a tool. And because we wanted to take a very simple example to understand the concept of discrete time Fourier transform. So now my signal in my time domain h of n. How is my signal in the time domain? It is 1, 2, 1 and 0 otherwise. Now this signal in the frequency domain, in the frequency domain has a response given by 2 plus and what for omega equal to 0, what's the value? 2 plus 2, that's a 4. And omega equal to 2 pi. Omega equal to 2 pi, again it's going to be same as cos of 0, and hence again it's going to be 4. And omega at minus 2 pi also it's going to be 4. At omega equal to pi, cos phi is a minus 1, so 2 minus 2 is going to be a 0. Similarly at minus pi, it's an even. So then what do I have? I have a cosine. I have a cosine signal, and this is periodic. And yes, not so good at drawing the cosine function, but that's okay. So we know how a cos function looks like, and this is what I get. And how is it? It is periodic. It is periodic, and the period is 2 pi. And in this particular example, we got it as a real function. We got h of omega as real, and we're not having any complex terms. And hence I'm able to represent it by a single plot. And when do we get a real h of omega? If my h of n is even. If h of n is even, is an even function of n, then my h of omega becomes real. So this is my h omega. h omega that I'm getting for this particular example of this. And of course, by looking at the at this frequency response in the interval minus pi to plus pi, if I look at it, I can recognize this is a low pass filter. This is a low pass filter. So now, and the notation that we have been using, we use h of n in square brackets. This means this quantity is discrete. The n is a running variable and they are discrete. And when I move to the frequency domain, I am getting h of omega. I am using the round brackets. And what does it mean? Omega is a continuous variable. Omega is a continuous variable. So even though I have a discrete time signal, the frequency response is continuous time. Continuous is continuous in frequency. So that is why these round brackets for continuously varying functions and a square bracket for the argument being the n being discrete. Now let's move further. And so now if I consider this interval, let me consider just the h of omega, in one period for this example. In the okay, let me consider h of omega just in one period. It is periodic. We know it's periodic. Say 2 pi, and this was say 4, and this is also 4, and here it will be a 0, not 0, 2. And of course it is periodic. So let's consider this interval of 0 to 2 pi. Let's consider the interval of 0 to 2 pi. We are considering one period in the interval 0 to 2 pi. Now, and we also know that omega is continuous. Now, what if I try to take say 4 samples? I take 4 samples from this 4 samples from one period. So what are my samples going to be? So say my omega is at 0, say pi by 2, say pi, and 3 pi by 2. And of course 2 pi is same as 0. So I consider 4 values at what happens at omega equal to pi by 2. Let's just go back to our h of omega. Our h of omega we said is 2 plus 2 cos omega. For my input for h of n being 1 to 1. This has this h of omega. So omega equal to pi by 2. Cos pi by 2 is a 0, so I get a value of 2. So now I am going to discretize my omega. See, my omega is actually continuous, but I am going to discretize it. So let us say I take 4 samples. So let us say my n equal to 4, and I compute 4 samples, h of k. If I look at this particular example, when omega equal to 0, what is my sample? It is 4. When omega equal to pi by 2, this is pi by 2, it is 2. Omega equal to pi, it's a 0. Omega equal to 3 pi by 2, once again it is a 2. So if I take 4 samples from this one continuous period of 0 to 2 pi, what I get in this particular example is given by 4, 2, 0, 2. Now, instead of taking n equal to 4, let us say I take n equal to 8. Let us say I take n equal to 8. Then what will happen? What happens is, okay, let me so I take n equal to 8. and this is my h of omega. This is a very simple example that we have taken, and hence it is real. Otherwise, we normally have it as a complex function. H of omega is going to be complex, and I will have the magnitude and the phase. So now, if I take n equal to 8, what is going to be my if my n is equal to 8, and what will be my omega now? I need to take 8 samples. So it's going to be pi by 4, pi by 2, 3 pi by 4, and so on. So this is going to be pi by 4, pi by 2, 3 pi by 4, then 5 pi by 4, and 6 pi by 4, or 3 pi by 2, and 7 pi by 4. So I have my omega taking the values 0, pi by 4, pi by 2, 3 pi by 4, pi, 5 pi by 4, 6 pi by 4, and 7 pi by 4. These are my 8 values in space, because I'm having the interval only 0 to 2 pi. In this interval of 0 to 2 pi, I am taking 8 samples. So now where will my samples be? Now my samples are going to be, let me use another, is going to be here. My next sample is going to be here. My next sample overlaps with my earlier sample. Next sample is here. And this is again overlapping with my earlier sample, which I had taken for n equal to 4. This is my sample, and this is my sample, and this is my sample. This is how I get my 8 samples, 8 samples for n equal to 8. Now, and what is my samples? The 8 samples for n equal to 8. Now this, I think I will take the help of MATLAB in computing. We try to do it by observation, but let's try to compute for n equal to 8. So as a first example, when we took n equal to 4, n equal to 4, our omega moved from 0 to n minus 1, 0 to 3, and we are trying to take it in a range of 0 to 2 pi and divided by n. And what is my h of omega? My h of omega is 2 plus 2 cos omega. What are the values? 4202. This is what we got by looking at our earlier example. When I took my example h of omega, and when I took only 4 samples in one period, my sampling interval was pi by 2, in intervals of spacing was pi by 2, and when I took the samples from h of omega, I got the result as 4202. Now let me take 8. Let me take 8 samples. So now I am going to define n as 8. I'm going to take n as 8. So my omega will go from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 7, and the whole range is getting multiplied by 2 by divide by n. So this is my h of omega. This is my omega, samples of omega. And what is my h omega? H omega is the same, 2 plus 2 cos omega. Let me evaluate it, and let's see what's the value. It comes out to be a 3.414, 2.58, 0.58, to 3.414. So let's write this. So now what we have is, these are my samples of omega. Omega 8 equally spaced samples in the interval 0 to 2 pi gives me as omega spacing as pi by 4. And when I take these samples, what I get is 4, then 3.414, then 2, then 0.58, then 0, then 0.58, then a 2, and 3.414. See, so these are my eight samples from my periodic h of omega taken in one period in the interval 0 to 2 pi. And what is interesting is if I look at for n equal to 8 and if I compare it with the result for n equal to 4, so my h of k is 4202. When I increase the resolution, I'm just getting additional values in between. So I can extract the 4 samples from the result given corresponding to n equal to 8. From n equal to 8, I can get the result for n equal to 4. Now let's try to do the same for, let us say, n equal to 16. N equal to 16, what will happen is I will have if I put n equal to 16, if I put n equal to 16, what will happen? My omega samples are going to go from 0, then pi by 16, 2 pi by 16, 3 pi by 16, and so on up to 15 pi by 16. This is what I am going to get. And then if I compute these 16 h of k, let us see what is it. And we know that we will be getting additional values in between. So I am going to get maybe samples in between the earlier samples that we computed for n equal to 8. So this is what I will get for if I take n equal to 16. So let's take the help of MATLAB in computing the result for n equal to 16. So now I changed my n to 16, and then I once again compute my h omega, which is the same example, 2 plus 2 cos omega, and this is what I get. I get the result as 3.84, then 3.414 was the result corresponding to n equal to 8. Then in between I have a value 2.76, then 0, then 1.23 and 0.58 and so on. So this is what we get the result. So I have 3.8, then 2.7, then 1.2, then 0.15 and so on. And so if I try to write the values for n equal to 16, I have my values as 4, say 3.8, 3.414, 2.7, 2, 1.2, 0.58, 0.15, 0, and so on, and the last value being 3.8. So 16 values, and what we recognize is my n equal to 8. I can extract the values corresponding to n equal to 8 by taking the alternate terms. So if I from the results of n equal to 16, I can get the result corresponding to n equal to 8. I can get the result for n equal to 8. If I have to write the complete sequence, 0, 0.15, 0.58, 0.12, 0.15, then 0.58, 1.2, 2, 2.7, 3.414 and 3.8. So my 8 samples, if I want my 8 samples, this is the one, then 0, 0.58 to 3.4. So I get I can take the alternate samples from a 16 samples. If I take from the 16 samples, I can get 8. From 8, I can get 4, but not the other way. I cannot do an interpolation or take the average and predict the values in between. They are related by the expression. So now this taking n equally spaced samples. Taking n equally spaced samples from one period in the interval 0 to 2 pi, taking n equally spaced samples in the interval 0 to 2 pi, of course excluding 2 pi, is known as the discrete Fourier transform. Discrete Fourier transform. So what we have is, we have a very interesting observation. If I take the samples h of n, if I take my samples h of n, say some for this, if I consider this example or in general, if I take xn, I move to h of omega, which is continuous, and it could be something. In this particular example, it's periodic. I mean, of course, periodic for all xn, hn, h of omega. And when I take the samples, n samples, if I take n samples from this periodic spectrum of 0 to 2 pi, I am going to get, say I take n equally spaced samples in the interval 0 to 2 pi, and these n equally spaced samples h of k. So now let us look at the bracket. It's again discrete because I have discretized my omega. And hence that's why I have this notation of h of k. And this is known as the n-point discrete Fourier transform. The n-point discrete Fourier transform. And for notation, if I have h of n, I can the discrete Fourier transform is given by h of k. Of course, I can go this way. I can take hn, I can compute h of omega, and then take equivalent space samples, and I'll get this. But I can bypass this in intermediate step, and directly from hn I can move to h of k. And how is that given? This is given by h of k is given by sigma n equal to 0 to n minus 1 h of n e to the power of minus j 2 pi n k by n. It is just taking the samples, but we had earlier e power minus j n omega. Now omega is discretized into n equally spaced samples in the interval 2 pi. That is why we have 2 pi divided by n. But how many samples? Okay, my n running from 0 to n minus 1. And how many samples I'm going to get? K samples. So for k going from 0, 1 up to n minus 1. And similarly, if I have h of k, I can get my inverse. I can get back my sequence h of n using this relation. Sigma k equal to 0 to n minus 1 h of k e to the power of j 2 pi n k by n, where again n goes from 0 to n minus 1. So this is our this expression is known as the discrete Fourier transform, and this is the inverse discrete Fourier transform. So now we have discrete time signal and we have the discrete Fourier transform. Both are discrete in both the domain, but we should always remember that it is actually not discrete. We have discretized it. It's actually h of omega is continuous. In this continuous frequency h of omega, we are discretizing the omega into n equally spaced samples, and we are trying to compute only the discrete values at those discretized intervals of omega, and that gives me h of k. So in the next module, we will consider examples on computing DFT given a sequence HN, computing DFT and the IDFT. Will also take up some properties of the discrete Fourier transform. Now, methods of computing, its properties and applications. So thank you.